This video is brought to you by Union of Gnomes, the deck-building roguelike where you stack together groups of bearded men to bring down your favorite fairy tale characters. The treacherous Snow White has used her enchanting voice to enslave your kind, and it's up to you to lead the gnome uprising. Free your fellow height-impaired comrades, gain new cards and playable heroes as they join your ranks, and work towards putting a stop to her oppressive rule. See the end of the gnome oppression in the story mode, or try to survive the infinite gameplay of Never-Ending Nightmare. It's up to you to build a deck with perfect game-breaking synergy as what I assume is a group of non-speaking rappers. You know, because in Union of Gnomes, the G is silent. A demo is available right now, and Union of Gnomes hits early access on July 18th, so head on over to the Steam page and start your uprising today. Boo all you want.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Windbreaker podcast. A day late and hopefully not $1 short. I'm Yahtzee Croshaw. I'm joined by Frost and Marty.
Hello.
The short
There
dollars.
they are.
The short dollars.
Yes. Yahtzee and the short dollars. There you go. That's our 60s speak combo. And this week, we are talking about the games we can't get out of our head. Not games that we like and think are good. Lord knows you've heard enough from us about the games we like and think are good. I like Silent Hill 2. He likes Persona 5. He likes Binding of Isaac. There, we mentioned them. We don't have to again. The games that we still think about, despite them not being particularly noteworthy or interesting.
That was a very, he remembered kind of moment there.
Oh,
Yeah.
He does listen.
Yeah.
Occasionally.
Yeah.
Who wants to go first? I'm sure we've all got some things in mind.
Yeah, I have I have a bunch on my list. So do we want to just go kind of like round robin, or I guess do we want to talk about like from a top level view, like what do we mean by why do we think there are certain elements in these things that we can't stop thinking about?
Oh, this is a therapy session, really. Like this is what's.
Is that? I like that. Yeah.
Tell me about the game.
Yeah. Yeah, this is cheaper than therapy. Well, for me, I've got two games in my mind.
Okay.
I might think of more, but two games that when I think back to not necessarily good games that stick out in my memory that I tend to come back to. One of them because of story reasons, and one of them because of gameplay reasons. So if you've got a whole bunch, maybe you should start.
Well, I'm kind of curious about the difference between your story reasons and your gameplay reasons.
Oh,
but going from. Well, go ahead.
Well, it sounded like you were launching into something.
No, I was going to say there's sort of an overarching thing for some of my picks is there's something about kind of bad and janky games that I find really endearing. And as a critic, I feel like playing them in a non-ironic way is ultimately good for sort of almost like readjusting yourself, like cleansing your palate, or like, you know, we talked about this a lot. I think it was last year when we had that sort of gradual, this is the worst game of all time. No, this is the worst game of all time. No, this is. And when you sit down and play some of them, like that Lord of the Rings Gollum game that everyone was like, oh, this is the, this is a harbinger of doom for the video game industry. And then I sat down and I played, I think I did a stream with Frost and I played through the entire thing myself. And I was like, this is just kind of regular bad in a way we used to get a lot. And we used to get a lot, and I would just rent it from the store and play it. And it wouldn't be this thing I would have to kind of explain for myself, or a thing that became this topic of conversation. It was just like, here is kind of the junk food game that you eat and you pass through. And there's something about that it doesn't feel like we get a lot anymore. And I kind of missed it. And so Gollum is a game I keep thinking about, and Balan Wonderworld from a few years ago is a game I keep thinking about in that same direction.
No, I'm definitely with you on that. I've often said it's practically one of my catchphrases that bad is better than bland when it comes to being a critic. Because bad game when I'm playing a game and I realize it's just plain bad, just plain like Gollum, horribly designed, buggy, really cringeworthy story. My first instinct is to feel very positive, like, oh, this is gonna be a fun review to write. I'm really gonna be sharpening the old testicle hammer on this.
Yeah,
I'm sharpening the back of the hammer. It's a claw hammer, you see.
Mm.
So, and I mean, you say people were talking about Gollum like it was the herald at the end of the industry. Bland games feel more like that to me. Everything's getting churned into a big grey machine.
You have a healthy relationship with bad games, it seems. Because mine is you're like, oh, cathartic, it's free. You do whatever. You've already shit the bed. What's a little wee? You know, you've already done it. Me, if it just keeps getting worse, I was like, I'd rather not talk about you because I have to be the bad guy. You're making me hurt you. Like, why would you do this?
Hey, it's nice being the heel. It's much more cathartic.
But if I'm always the heel, then where's the catharsis?
Well, you can like work your frustrations out on it.
I suppose.
Say,
it just turns into like a yearning of hopes and dreams.
Ain't no one going to defend you. Ain't no one going to defend you, Gollum. I'm going to kick you right in the nuts.
Oh, he's not that bad of a boy. See,
it feels good.
Unwarranted bullying. Is that what that was?
Also, he's definitely been castrated at some point. Like, I feel like Gollum's been tortured enough. He doesn't have nuts to kick anymore.
I'm not bullying anyone who made Gollum.
Sure.
You are not your work and all that. Okay. To talk about bullying a game is sort of like, feels like feeding into that whole corporate narrative where if you talk shit about the Ghostbusters remake, it means you're a misogynist.
No, I think maybe what Frost is getting to is there's like a salivating kind of dog pile. It feels like 1 or 2 games every year becomes the sacrificial lamb, and it just last year it just felt like we had several in a row from Forspoken and this and
I've been thinking about Forspoken. I've been thinking about Forspoken again lately because I've been reviewing Flintlock: The Siege of Dawn, which feels like it has a very lot of comparisons between the two.
Yeah.
Yeah, like even that year, worst game, like as far as like jank and not working, Redfall was really rough. That Kong game, but we went for Gollum. So I was like, oh, this is a little unfounded. You're making me have to equalize here.
I think I could imagine some people finding fun in Redfall. I could imagine at a pinch someone finding fun in Forspoken. I could not imagine anyone finding fun in Gollum. Gollum is a universally terrible experience.
We found love in Middle Earth.
We found love being a little slimy guy climbing up walls and water wheels.
Yeah. But anyway, let's get to our personal specifics, because as we might have given away, the game I want to talk about for story, I want to talk about because it is a bad story.
Mm-hmm.
But bad in a really interesting way. And that game is Bionic Commando on the PS3. Not the original, the remake that was also called Bionic Commando, just to confuse everyone. Because for some reason...
my wife arms?
Oh, we'll get to that. But for some reason, someone decided that the best approach to take for the Bionic Commando remake would be a sort of, what was it, Bomberman equivalent? Grittification of what was originally a colourful and nice NES game.
Yeah.
The original Bionic Commando, in which you played the character Radical Spencer, was, a nice, colourful, fun adventure where you were a dude with a grappling hook arm fighting XP Nazis. And you wore sunglasses. You were like a Duke Nukem-style hero. And then in the remake, you are Nathan Radical Spencer, and it is a direct sequel to the NES game, and suddenly you're like this PTSD-afflicted, gritty, angry Kratos-style man who's fighting for the liberation of bionically enhanced people in a hideous apocalyptic city. And then, of course, there's the twist. I mean, the game's got really dumb storytelling up to the end. But then there's the twist. in which Radical Spencer has been really angsty and his usual gritty self the whole time because he's very angry about his wife having left him. His wife having just left without a word, with no explanation. It's the seed for his entire character and the angst therein. And then it turns out that the reason why his wife disappeared is because his superiors took her brain and put it in his bionic arm. Because bionic arms only work if they have the brain of a close relative inside it. There's another character who's got their little brother in their leg. And, where do you start? I mean, when you talk about like the really bad, the best bad stories are the ones that inspire yelling questions at the screen. And I have a whole raft of questions to yell at the screen on this one. Why do you need a brain inside a fucking winch to make the winch work?
Keep in mind, it's bionic. I don't know what that means, but just keep in mind.
Beauty and the Beast, no? The Lumiere winch.
And you know what? There's a way it could have worked. There's a relatively simple way it could have worked. And that's if they'd actually characterized the arm. If the arm had like a little computer AI voice that could talk to the player, then they could establish that the AI voice is the one that's like organizing all your mission readouts and HUDs and stuff. So it's more than just a fucking winch. But no, your arm has just
like little hints that
yes,
that there's a
your arm has been a silent tool this entire time. I mean, when you get down to it, the first thought you're going to have when you realize his wife is his arm is how their sex life is going to unfold from now on.
Sure. It's masturbating. It's by cranking off.
Winchy mama, hey.
Winchy mama. Like, what do you? I'm always curious. I don't know if there's ever been like postmorts on that of like what, like, did they think it would land like emotionally? Like, did they think this would be sort of like this is, I feel like a lot of games of the PS3 360 era had a lot of those kind of AAA games needed to like have some kind of twist, and maybe it was BioShock
the other one
introduced that, but
the other one that leaps to mind is Inversion. Do you remember that one?
Remember the game?
It was
I played it.
It was a generic-y third-person shooter where you're a dude fighting off an army in a post-apocalyptic setting. His city gets invaded by bad guys. Very Gears of War-y. It's got a anti-gravity gimmick where you fight them on walls every now and again. And the twist in that game was that you spend the whole game looking for your missing daughter, and then it turns out she was dead all along, and your side character knew and just didn't want to tell you.
Oh, that's just rude. That's just extremely rude.
And it was in pursuit of this that we've basically like decimated the entire enemy army and put ourselves through hell. And it turns out all along our side character could have just said, hey, just a thing. If they just communicated this, the whole thing could have been avoided. I remember there's a scene in the story where your main character's like they're at their lowest point, and the main character and his sidekick feel like there's no more hope. And the main character stands up and goes, "Come on, we've got to do this for my daughter." And the sidekick just sort of gives him this very sort of weary look.
And goes, "She's dead,"
and then goes, "All right, fine." I'm like, you can really, once you know the twist, you can really get a sense of what's going through that guy's head. It's like, this has gone on too long that I can't really bring it up anymore.
I think a better twist would also be if the main character was like the guy from Memento, so the partner's just sick and tired because he has to be the one to reveal it every day and be like, "Yep, your daughter's dead. Sorry, I did it again."
I'm so glad. Yeah. I was like, "This is some Nolan type romance."
Boy, I'm really
all my bedside manner's been thrown out the window after the 1,000th time of trying to handle this delicately.
Boy, I'm really regretting this little white lie that spiraled out of control. I almost relish the PS3 era of dodgy, story-focused shooters because they felt like they had to try to have like an interesting story, as opposed to these days when they just say, "Hey, now finish the side quests."
Oh, yeah, where it almost feels like you could separate you could be like, "Well, the game is just the game, and then we'll try to pepper in the story through these side quests, and never the twain shall meet."
I'll pick up that baton for the narrative side of things. Mine was No Place for Bravery. I always get that one confused with No Country for Old Men. But it does this weird thing where so wife dies, daughter's been kidnapped, and I'm bloodthirsty, seeking out vengeance. But one of the main mechanics is that there's always a story option to just end it. Not end yourself, but just like, you know what you have now is fine, right? So at the beginning bit, it's your friend. He's like, we could just let it go, you know? And you select that, and he's like, and he recovered, and he's fine, and credits roll. But then you have to play the whole damn thing all over again if you actually want to get rest of the game. But it does this constantly, and you're never really sure which one is the like, okay, is this just dialogue or is this the game ending one? And you have to keep going, and you have to keep going multiple times over. So like, do I kill this woman? No, don't kill her. You know what? I have seen the error of my ways. I'm gone. Like, damn you, fine. So like, you're supposed to get through the game. You have to be heinous. You have to be awful. And then by the end, you find the thing that stole your daughter, and it is your daughter that you're fighting. And if you get all the way through, she's like, you're a bad man, Dad. I ran away because you're so hateful. Why would you do that? And then the game's like, why would you do that, player? And I'm like, what do you mean? Because I wanted to see the game. It didn't help that it also bugged a lot. But I'm sticking to the story thing. What a very strange way of going for like ludonarrative cohesion. It is bad to be an aggressive, angry man and to constantly seek out revenge. You should just walk away from it. But if you want to see the rest of the game, you have to make these bad choices. I'm like, come on.
Well, at least the game gives you the choice. I mean, Spec Ops The Line, everyone complains about in that area. Like, it makes you do bad things and then talk shit about you for doing bad things.
Sure, but it's like I did a bad thing. Like, I killed an old man, and then later they're like, you were kind of really brutal about that. It's like, you know what? Yeah, you're right. I'm going to go chill now.
So on one level, that's sort of an exploration of interactive storytelling as a concept that I kind of appreciate. Sort of right up there with the BioShock, Would You Kindly twist. Hey, if art makes you think, then it's done its job.
You were being sincere.
So you can't. Right? So I don't think it's a. Yeah, I don't think you can complain about a game that accuses you of badness for doing bad things that it made you do. I think that's a way to approach interactive storytelling that's actually pretty interesting.
Wasn't that one of the main complaints in Last of Us Part 2?
Behind the genocide.
It provokes a reaction. That's the point. I mean, in Last of Us 2's case, it provoked a negative reaction. I never said Last of Us 2 wasn't art.
Oh, well, I mean, we are talking memorable games, so that one stands out to me. I have brought that game up more than other games that were just, decent story and whatnot. So it made a lasting impression, that's for sure. A very confusing one, but I like bringing it up at bars. It's great.
There you go.
You look like Abby. There was like a stretch in the like 2011, 2012, the late 360 PS3 generation, where a couple games in a row came out that I was really excited for, and that just did not hit the mark for me. But there are small parts of them I still think about daily. Shadows of the Damned, which was one of those like on paper, like, oh, this is a melding of this is Suda 5-1 and this is Shinji Mikami and this is like an original kind of like horror action story. Like this can be cool. And for me, the game was a giant mess, except for Akira Yamaoka's incredible score, and obviously Akira Yamaoka of the Silent Hill franchise. But he's a guy who's like gone on to sort of he'll make music for anything. Like, I kind of respect how much he's like, just pay me and I'll put up a little ditty for you. But there's one song specifically where there's these little like light up slugs you have to follow through the dark, and the music through that section is like one of my favorite musical tracks in games of that decade, even though the game itself is just like totally like, I know a remaster's coming out and maybe I'll revisit it, but it's just one of those games that like gameplay wise just did not stick with me, despite the fact that I loved all of its disparate pieces, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot of things I remember about Shadows of the Damned. Like, there's one specific moment I'm thinking of where the main character, whose name was Garcian Hotspur, was that it?
There's a name.
That's right.
And he has a gun sidekick named Johnson, which is very overtly a penis reference.
It's like his penis.
And,
yeah, it's like his penis.
And there's one sequence where he holds Johnson in front of his crotch, and Johnson transmutes into a much larger cannon form, which is referred to as the Big Boner. And I know it's called that because every time you fire it, Garcian shouts, "Taste my Big Boner," in a Hispanic accent.
Yeah,
and that is the moment that sticks.
What could you mean?
What could he mean?
That is the moment that sticks out in my memory.
Oh my god. It's a big boner, man. Here it comes.
Taste my Big Boner.
The other game that came out right around then that I just lump them all together was NeverDead, which was again another like sort of like somewhat spooky, more heavily action game. Felt very kind of campy and B-movie-ish, but the entire thing was like your character was like a reanimated corpse or whatever that you would get blown up, but you would still control like yourself without certain limbs or just certain limbs. And there would be times where you get blown up and you're just a head and you're just rolling your head around the level. And like as a head, you can almost Metroidvania get through, like instead of turning into a morph ball, you just exploded and used your head to like roll through these tight spaces.
Yeah, NeverDead's gimmick was that you were a regenerating immortal who couldn't die. And the only way to get a game over was to get all your arms and legs and the head blown off and then your head to get eaten by a thing that would basically like send it to hell forever. Yeah. So you wouldn't actually die, you'd just be trapped eternally as a head.
Which again, like I think the reason it sticks with me is because it's like on paper, it's not bad. It's like, okay, that's kind of neat.
It was an interesting idea, but I think its mistake was that it tried to be combat focused. And the thing about unique combat mechanics is that you shouldn't you should give the player a chance to bounce back. And that's not going to happen if every time they get hit, they get weakened. If you lose a limb, you have suddenly less ability.
Yeah.
And so that's why the combat didn't work. I did think the mechanic of being able to rip off all of your body parts and regenerate would have worked in something like a puzzle game or a traversal-focused exploration game. And wouldn't you know it, a few years later, Swery brought out a game called The Missing J.J. Macfield and the Island of Memories, in which you played a character who could regenerate from any injury and use that ability to solve puzzles. They could throw their head into out-of-reach places and way down switches and stuff like that.
Oh, interesting.
That's that one free-to-play game. What was it? Hands that you kept trying to make me play, Marty?
Handshake.
Handshake, yeah.
It's not free-to-play. It's just free. There's a difference between free-to-play and free.
Yes, so that's what I think was NeverDead's mistake.
It was NeverDead's, yeah. And then,
but I'm glad you. Sorry, you were saying?
Oh no, I was going
to change the subject. So if you had more to elaborate on there.
Nope, please go.
Okay, so I'm glad you brought up games that have interesting, unique mechanics that they didn't really use to the full. Mm-hmm. Because the other game I wanted to bring up was Alone in the Dark, the PS3 game. Which was just called Alone in the Dark. Again, confusing things. It was the one.
There have been 3 Alone in the Darks, right? There was the original, there was that one, and then there was the one from last year.
Okay, there was Alone in the Dark 1, there was Alone in the Dark 2, there was Alone in the Dark 3. That was part of that was the original trilogy.
Yeah.
Then there was Alone in the Dark New Nightmare, which was like a PS1 era Resident Evil clone. And there was the game I'm talking about, which was just called Alone in the Dark. It had a re-released version that was called Alone in the Dark Inferno. And then after that, the next Alone in the Dark was Alone in the Dark Illumination, which was a terrible multiplayer-focused game. And then there was the most recent Alone in the Dark. So after all that, again, we're back in the janky PS3 story mode games. Alone in the Dark is a game I always remember because it has the best fire physics of any game I've ever seen. You had the ability to hold wooden items, to hold them to a fire. The wooden item would catch fire where you touched the fire. The fire would travel along the wooden item until it eventually burned to ash and you couldn't use it anymore.
I was literally watching Eric's footage that he's playing, and my first thought was at the beginning was like, "Damn, that's some good looking fire."
You could leave trails of gasoline that you could then light.
Yeah,
you could make improvised Molotovs. It was basically an immersive sim that was entirely fire focused. Every enemy you were up against could only be hurt by fire, so you had this like arsenal of different ways you could apply fire to them. Most of the time, you just hit them with a burning stick, but you could cover them with gas. You could leave a gas trail. You could sellotape a gas bottle to them and leave the cap off, so that they would leave a trail of gasoline for you to light. It was just above and beyond the Call of Duty for fire alone, and then the rest of the game was just kind of shite.
Aw. Started so well.
Yeah, if only we just stuck with fire and never went anywhere else.
I'd like to see a game take those same fire physics and either work them into a large immersive sim or like something like a teardown. I would say like teardown would probably be another example of excellent fire physics. And I just I just wonder why you don't see fire physics that good anywhere else. What happened to our ambitions? What happened to our fire ambitions?
Wasn't there like
is it taxing? Like on your system?
Yeah.
I assume it must have been, but
wow, these graphics they smell realistic.
I mean, the game had a lot of issues, but that might have just been because it was very jankily put together. Like I remember the car physics were really bad. Like you drive over a hump and your entire chassis would just fly off.
I blame that on the fire. I don't know why. I don't know how the fire had something to do with it. It's interesting that in a single franchise like that, like I don't know what's better or worse. I guess I appreciate it more that it Silent Hill did the same thing as it went on of having like a game and taking a big swing with it, or trying to have like a core idea around it that separated it from what came before it and what came afterwards. And that doesn't mean it always was successful. Like I think sometimes it was successful, like in Silent Hill 4, The Room, or in Shattered Memories, and then other times like in what was the rain one? Downfall?
Yeah, Downpour.
Rain.
Yeah, heavy rain. A little less, but I guess like I don't know. I appreciate taking a big swing, which I think it feels like a lot of the games we're talking about are games that set out trying to take a big swing, and then ultimately, the swing didn't really connect for one reason or another, which is how most big swings I would say go.
Games are always trying to impress with new realistic graphics engines and new realistic physics engines. I want to see them actually make fire work the way fire is supposed to work, and I want them to figure out water as well. I want them to figure out how to get water to work the way water actually works. I want a game where if a room's flooded with water, you can either swim through it or you can spend like 6 hours emptying it with a bucket. Where you just have to pour the water out onto the ground and the water gets absorbed by the dirt.
Or I want a game where I can drink the water faster than it's flooding the room. Jesus Christ. I like that.
Because there's so like most games, if there's water, it's basically just there's this rectangle of blue liquid that you can fly in that's different to air. And I've yet to see a game that makes it look realistic to pass from above water to below. It just feels like you've just passed through a like non-corporeal divider that separates one environment from another.
Is it fun though? What would you do with that?
Well, you can make a game like how about a game where you're in a submarine and you have to like if there's a hole in the wall of the submarine, you have to patch it up or it'll gradually fill up entire rooms if you can't block off like bulkheads and stuff.
If you're in a submarine and suddenly there's a hole coming through, I feel like it implodes. No, that's a lot of pressure.
Well, I'm not asking for 100% accurate physics.
Well, can I stick my finger on it then? And like it's co-op. Like,
you don't want to be that Titanic sub?
Yeah, maybe it's a shallow water submarine. Maybe it's just off the coast of the Maldives.
Yeah, we'll get there. It does sound a bit like Noida, as people are bringing up. It's a pixel based.
Yeah, but I'm saying we should. They should try to do it in 3D as well. I mean, they could do it with particles pretty easily in 2D. Like play games like Where's My Water or something. I want to see someone try in 3D. I mean, we've got to have the tech by now. If we just focus on that sort of thing and not just. I know, someone make it. That's your job, games industry.
You're a game maker. I'm with you. I'm with you there.
I don't know how to do it. I make shitty 2D games.
No,
Listen,
fair.
Miyamoto already did it. Mario Sunshine, greatest water game ever. We don't need anything else.
2D games together.
I want a game like Mario
That's a 4D
Sunshine.
game. That's 2Ds.
I want a game like Mario Sunshine, but where if you spray water from the flood, it gradually fills up whatever vessel you sprayed it at.
Sure.
Just naturally, as part of the natural physics.
I like this. I think the reason for that, and it's tying into those games that I find very memorable, but is you take a concept and then there's not much game to it now, is there? Like Viewfinder, there was only so much that they could have done with that, and it still sticks. But I'm like, I kind of wish you'd done something further than this.
Well,
that's where your water game would end up.
Water gradually filling a room is a very natural action sequence.
Mm.
Yeah, we've seen.
It's a reason why it's a reason why it's appeared so often in films. I think the best game mechanics sort of recreate classic action movie moments.
I like it.
Like things in like in Lethal Company when you're separated from the rest of your crew and you might be alone and there's something scary in the dark. That's a classic movie moment that's recreated naturally by the natural physics and mechanics of the game, and that's what I like to see.
Love it. There you go. There's your streamer bait, quote unquote, game. You're on a boat, holes keep popping up, and you're just racing to get the water out.
There you go.
Dun, dun.
And you can use objects. You can use fingers. You
Yeah,
have
put
like
the
all
finger-
10 of your fingers to put in the holes.
Yeah, just like Alone in the Dark did with fire. If you got something that would theoretically seal a hole, you could seal a hole with it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And you're fighting off a shark, but you might accidentally poke the hole even more. So it's just give and take.
Yeah.
We've kill the shark. You got tons of stuff to stuff in holes. Sharks are just full of hole stuffers.
Yeah, they were idea guys.
Yeah. Like you could grab the shark around the throat, pull it out of the sea, and just jam it where the hole is, and the shark goes, "Hey, I was supposed to eat you. This was not the way I thought this would turn out."
Phenomenal.
As it flaps impotently in the hole.
Move over, chain together. We got it.
Back to the main thesis before someone steals this game. You can't. This is copyrighted now. I also have a game I was going to bring up. And it's like, oh, I liked what you were going for, and then it fell apart completely. But that actually saved the game. And this is an Entropy Centre. It's a very, portally in the first person with a gun puzzle platformer type of way. Mm-hmm. And you're just trying to line up these paths so that you can get out of the room and move on. But the whole theme of it is time and entropy, and the world is the sun's about to blow up, and you need these rooms to be solved in different multiple ways. That's creating entropy. The variability of it all, that is creating entropy. But the early ones are so well constructed that there's only ever one way to solve them. But later on, I guess time was starting to get past them in the development stages. And the rooms were a little clunkier. I could break through the corners. I could latch on to the weird misshapen physics planes. I could just jump through everything with a trampoline. It was falling apart as a game. From the technical side of things, it was falling apart. These were not well-designed rooms at all. But it was really, I was liking it thematically. Where I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I'm finding different ways that I can actually get through this thing. It is entropy. It's all falling apart around me as I'm getting through there. So thematically, it's a 10 out of 10. The beginning bit, though, really, really hard, really hard to get through. Once you get past that halfway point where things start to get really sloppy and fall apart, it is one of the best games that I've ever played that is based on time and entropy in that way. But man,
I love the idea that when it gets messy, it starts getting interesting. When it feels polished is when it is losing you, and then when it's kind of starting to get rickety and falling apart is when you're like, okay, this is something worth paying attention to.
Don't know what
Did you have any more to bring up, Marty?
Yeah, the last one, just based on the thumbnail, and it's a game I love, but it's just one of those games that it feels like is considered kind of slight, and that's Astro's Playroom, which was the pack-in game for the PS5.
Yes, I remember.
Yeah, and it's a short 3D platformer. It's you could beat it in 2 hours. And it's one of the charming things about it is it's like a museum piece for Sony history. You see there's a bunch of small nods to all these old first-party Sony games and all these old games we associate with PlayStation and weird little peripherals and everything. But the thing in that game that stuck with me, and I just replayed it, and I'm still in awe that no one else has come close to it, is how it uses all the features. It's ostensibly a tech demo for the DualSense controller in a way that it makes me realize that so few games out there are really trying to push the relationship between the player and the input method of a game they play. And I get it because like ultimately it's not really important. But when I think back to like one of the memories, like a core memory I have in playing games was the first time I played Star Fox 64, and that was the game that came with the Rumble Pack. And it was the first time I ever played with a controller that rumbled, like when you got shot, it would rumble. When you did a barrel roll, it would rumble a little bit. And like that felt to me like one of those immersive steps, similar to how people talk about VR and AR. And Astro's Playroom does a similar thing with the DualSense in terms of if you're walking through sand, if a strong wind is blowing towards you, if you're carrying a bunch of things, if it's raining on you, the controller will react to all of that and feel different to all of that in a way that, like, even if it's subconscious, you're playing the game and you're like, oh, I'm clearly in the middle of a storm right now and I can feel that storm in my hands, or I'm pushing against, I'm trying to pull something with a lot of resistance and I can feel it in the triggers in a way that it just doesn't feel like other games really try to do that often. And I don't know, I kind of wish more games did. It just feels like an interesting, like you were talking about with water, like an interesting avenue that no one's really trying to go after.
Yeah, bring back the light gun.
I mean, honestly, maybe bring back the light gun. Yeah.
They're so lame, though.
What?
Pew, pew, pew.
Well, anything's lame if you make that noise when you do it. You can say, like, oh, the strongest man in the world lifting a weight.
But he's got it, my God.
He's got it.
I don't know. I think I'm pretty much over light gun games since the fucking Kinect/Wii era.
Yeah, that I remember a lot of Wii games, and I think it is because, as you said, Marty, this moment where I'm like, this is the future.
Yeah.
I remember playing Tenchu or whatever, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm the one blocking. I'm doing so well.
Yeah, and it's just maybe that technology was too early or just underbaked or it's too much of a hassle to build around, so they just were like, well, I'll stick to just...
It wasn't too early, it wasn't underbaked. The fundamental issue with that sort of thing is that trying to recreate the movement you're supposed to be doing in-game in real life is inherently immersion breaking. We want to be turning our bodies off and making movements as small as possible to push our buttons. That's how we get it immersed into an experience. Not by swinging a fucking sword, and then hoping that the game will register we're trying to swing a sword in the game as well.
But I don't think we're saying like every game now needs to do this. I just think there is like anything. Like to me, motion games weren't the future. It was a new genre, and it's a genre that's kind of been left at the wayside. I guess VR picked that up. But I guess it's also telling that none of the three of us are really hardcore VR
The hypothetical ultra. The point of ultra. Nowhere left to go technology in video games is where we don't have to move at all. Just pop a little spike into our spines, and then we can live like little VR daydreams with just brain impulses. That's what we want.
Jesus. I mean, it just sounds like WALL-E.
That's 100% immersion.
I don't know if I want that.
Fucking hell,
I think one of the reasons I like handheld games is because I like not being completely detached from the world around me. Like, I don't want to burn to death in my house.
Growing up,
I played basketball for a little while, not super long though.
So I wonder if part of that immersion comes with the sense of kinesthesia of like knowing where your body is. So like being active, I don't really think on it too much. It's not immersion breaking.
Well, anyway, shall we go to super chats?
I see chat. What games are burning in your mind? Balatro is the last one for me. Just Balatro. And Dark Souls when you finally reconnect back to Firelink Shrine. That's it.
There you go.
God, that moment.
You quickies.
That's like the moment for me, I think, going back to Firelink Shrine.
Whoa.
Dr. Theo gave $5 and says, one niche game I've been obsessed with is GTFO, a really hard pseudo-stealth co-op horror game that has amazing presentation.
It's funny, and then his next message said, and it has a bad name, and I genuinely think that hurt the game, because GTFO, when I hear its name, I just kind of roll my eyes, but from people I know who've played the game, they really liked it.
Hey, no one complained about the BFG in Doom.
That was the game wasn't named BFG.
This is a horror game? Yeah, I keep hearing about this, but GTFO is just get the fuck out.
Yeah,
it's a tells you what you need to know, I'd say.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Wow, this has got to win the award for like worst game name to the point where it undermines it, because this looks great.
Yeah.
Incredible title.
Anyway, a winged potato, member for 8 months in the Green Gang, says Yahtzee's time in Australia made him a Kylie fan. Hey, Kylie Minogue was big in England as well. I knew who Kylie was. And it's funny how when you say Kylie these days, people might think you mean Jenner.
Oh, can't get you out of my head. I got it.
Yes.
The title of the podcast. Tricky. Casey in the chat says Nick, Jesse, and I played GTFO with the dev. That can't be true. Impossible.
Oh, yeah.
I don't remember that at all.
I vaguely remember that.
Did you tell him the title sucked?
Alex Armstrong gives $5 and says, forgot to mention this in your Too Hard episode. Thoughts on Alien Hominid, the Newgrounds run and gunner some consider the hardest game in existence. I have never played it.
I remember it was like a big flash hit, and then they eventually made it was one of those early Xbox Live arcade games. I didn't put a ton of time in it, but I played a lot of Castle Crashers, which that same developer, the Behemoth, ended up doing later.
I love their stuff.
Yeah. Darwin Stummy, member for 8 months in the Green Gang, says, after seeing Marty play Balan, the vibes got me.
See? There's something about Balan Wonderworld. There's something about these games when you think back to, and you're like, maybe it's Stockholm Syndrome, maybe I was cursed, but I have fond memories of it.
It's just bad in a very memorable way.
You weren't bored. That's it.
I wasn't bored, and that's the important thing. In 2024, as long as I'm not bored, that's all I can ask for. I think back to the N64 notoriously did not have almost any RPGs. JRPGs, any RPGs. By that point, everyone was like, okay, PlayStation's where we need to go for this. But they did have a game called Quest 64, which was one of its few RPGs, and it was broken at a fundamental level. Every system in the game, it just didn't have money. Which, if you tell me what's the thing an RPG needs to have, I'd be like, it probably needs to have money, right? Are you an RPG if you don't have money? But that's one of those games I rented, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to trick myself into really enjoying. And I haven't revisited it in 25 years, but I'm thinking about it every day. I want Quest 64 to know I'm thinking about you.
Well, that'll teach the N64 not to have cartridges. That's why there weren't any fucking RPGs on it.
Yeah.
Just wasn't room on the disc. Where was I? Dr. Theo comes back with $5 and says, another game I will always remember is the Henry Stickmin collection. Feels like a time capsule of my childhood with all the references in it.
Henry Stickmin. This also looks like a Newgroundsy. This absolutely looks like a Newgroundsy thing.
Some Flash representation.
Yeah. That's such a, I think I've talked about it on another podcast. That's such a blind spot for me. I think I was on the internet then. I was definitely on the internet then, but I don't know what I was doing.
In school.
Yeah, that's a good, was Flash the schools?
Yeah, a lot of it is I've got 20 minutes, so I can go to the computer lab and everything's blocked, but not this for some reason.
Yeah.
Interesting. It was a cultural thing.
Bogbepog gives $10 and says, shout out to Frost in the chat.
Hey, that's a me.
Were you in the chat?
Was I
on the screen?
I'm here now.
Yeah.
Shout out to me.
Number 10 gives $5 and says, have you ever heard of Yeek, a postmodern RPG? Not a good game, but one of the most interesting games I've ever seen. I've never played it, but I've watched the rather excellent video essay on it by Tsnakera on YouTube. And yes, from having watched that, I can see it's, well, from a broad perspective, it seems interesting, but the moment-to-moment experience seems to be as boring as batshit.
Holy, look at that.
Because it's one of those games that's got way too much fucking writing because the main director fancied themselves an excellent writer. So it's just characters talking about their feelings for 6 hours at a go.
Love hearing about feelings. Chat, if you have feelings, let us know about your feelings. Sound off in the comments below. I feel like by saying a postmodern RPG, that might be much like GTFO. That might be a thing where I'm like, I don't want. What are you doing?
It is
I don't
well.
want to engage with this.
I guess the title tells you everything you might suspect about the game. In that it is probably one of the most pretentious indie games that's you'll ever see.
But as long as it's
got
aware
my
of it.
attention, I'm here like, you know what? I don't like traditional RPGs. Let's go postmodern. Sure.
What about pre-modern? What's pre-modern? Ooh.
Pre-modern.
Well, you could argue Earthbound was a postmodern RPG, and this is very much trying to be that, but in a much more forced kind of way.
Well, there you go.
I feel like at a certain point, though, if you're trying to be like all the other postmodern RPGs, you're no longer postmodern, right? Like you're just trying to
need
fit,
a name,
like,
lads.
And once you call yourself postmodern, then you're kind of not anymore.
Yeah.
Anyway, Alex Armstrong gives $5 and says, a moment that sticks with me is the second boss in Fashion Police Squad when you fight a trenchcoat nerd who fights you with a lightsaber, references, and memes. Yeah, Fashion Police Squad is a pretty good game. You should check it out. I think there's something about sprites in 3D environments that I've sort of turned off lately. It's probably why I didn't vibe with Sulaco so much. I just feel like, we've been using 3D models long enough to know that it's probably the best way to do this sort of thing. I've just kind of gone off sprites.
Even in like 2D games?
Billboarding here? Yeah.
Yeah, in 3D games. This classic Doom style sprite-based enemies.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just I'm trying to think if there's like specific aesthetics that I'm like completely turned off by, where if I click on something and see that, I kind of just step away.
But yeah, Fashion Police Squad is actually a very funny game with lots of fun visual gags.
There you go.
One of them being that one of the people we have to use our fashion police powers on is a trench coat wearing nerd. Obviously. Because you'd need to, that's the kind of person who needs intervention from the fashion police.
Oh.
The FPS.
Charlie Gomes gives $4.99 and says, Obra Dinn has driven me insane trying to find anything to even come close as a detective game. Love detective games, but the average sucks. I know, there's nothing quite like it, is there, Charlie Gomes? I've played The Golden Idol, but it's just not quite the same, is it?
It's not 3D, no.
You're not Obra Dinn.
Yeah, no. You'll have to kind of just settle for those logic puzzles now, where it's like Susie left before the butler, but the butler is not Tommy.
Yeah.
Just get a book of logic puzzles.
It's not the same, man.
Yeah. Or do the crosswords, or do nonograms. Those are deduction based.
Or try to find a serial killer and try to catch him, like a long legs. Try to catch long legs.
Identify the Zodiac killer at long last.
He outed himself. Shit talking on IMDb or whatever.
It's because he was so bored that no one could catch him.
Yeah. Man.
Danny123451 gives £5 and says, for story, I'm thinking Death Stranding. Excuse me. A fascinating idea told incredibly poorly with terrible dialogue, even more than Kojima's previous work. I wouldn't mind Kojima's verbal diarrhea as much if he'd just play it out over gameplay. Yeah. All those fucking codec conversations of Metal Gear Solid. Just let us listen to that while we're exploring the rooms looking for secrets.
Play the log as I'm trying to save my sinking submarine. But if we go under, I want to hear a muted.
So you're encouraged to do good so that you could get crisper audio, so you can actually hear everything.
Logs,
I think about Death Stranding all the time. I think about just wandering around Iceland, even though it's supposed to be America and it's so clearly Iceland. It doesn't matter. It's great.
It's post-apocalyptic America. It got Icelanded.
Yeah, that's true.
Alex Armstrong is $2 and says, Psychonauts Milkman Conspiracy comes to mind, lol. Yes, I like the very funny level.
That's real clever.
The trouble with Psychonauts 2, and this is going to make me sound like an arsehole, but Psychonauts 2 felt like it needed to be more sensitive to the concept of mental illness than Psychonauts 1. In Psychonauts 1, you go into the minds of people who are sort of mentally ill in a very cartoony, sort of insensitive kind of way, like the dude who thinks he's Napoleon, or the dude who's just like the Millman conspiracy novel, just sort of paranoid schizophrenic who believes the government's spying on him. But in the sequel, they felt like they had to depict all the characters' mental illnesses with like sensitivity and realism, and I felt like the game sort of lost something as a comedy work because of that.
I mean, in 15 years, you would think that the creators would sort of.
I know
in their nuance,
but,
of especially in a thing like that.
I just, what's wrong with having a funny gag about a dude in a straitjacket who thinks he's Napoleon? That's still funny, isn't it?
I thought Psychonauts. I think the first game is still funny, yeah, but I think Psychonauts 2. I don't think it. I don't know. It didn't feel less funny to me. Granted, I've only played Psychonauts 2 once, and I've replayed the first one several times.
I mean, I guess what I'm saying is that I don't think anyone was looking to Psychonauts for a realistic depiction of the mentally ill.
Oh, with that? Yeah,
no, but
I get what he's getting at. I think they could have adjusted for the modern sensibilities, but instead they sort of lightened the hit.
Yeah,
but I think it has more heart than the original. Like. And maybe that's just with
as
the developers growing up.
You're not going
sometimes
for heart.
Sometimes you have to be cruel to get to land the hardest hits when it comes to humor.
All this now. I was a little with him, and then he said that. And now I'm back over towards Marty.
No, I mean I think it's creators growing up. I think it's your outlook on something is different if you look back on the thing 15 years later, right?
Well, for me, it's like the first game was smacking someone in the face with a frying pan, and the second game was exploring the aftermath of someone having to go through lengthy hospital treatment for having been smacked in the face with a frying pan.
But still had funny writing.
Almost begs the question, it could have been something else, maybe. I don't know. I'm not against starting with Psychonauts and ending up as Hellblade,
God. That would be an intense sequel.
That is something I personally would not like to happen. Anyway, Zaratha, member for 6 months in tip jar. Thank you very much. Tsunami Dusha gives $20 and says nothing. And then Ryan Betts gives $2 and says nothing.
Says nothing.
In that he literally posted the word nothing, because I guess I'm getting predictable again. Palash T gives $4.99 and says, speaking of obscure games, I think about Nolf, meaning No One Lives Forever, and its NPC convos you can catch if you're sneaky, like the henchman worrying his laugh isn't evil enough. Yes, No One Lives Forever and its sequel were pretty good games, pretty good comedy games. Shame they're in ownership rights hell at the moment. Yeah, it'd be nice to see a re-release of those.
Them and Friday the 13th.
Hey, Night Dive, this is your whole thing. Fucking get on it.
I feel like they're the ones, right? They can dig into this, unearth this.
Those are the guys who have been remaking and re-releasing every bloody 90s shooter that's in rights hell.
I could see that.
I feel like, I could see them getting their teeth into this one. I mean, if no one really knows who owns the rights, just put it out. I mean, if nobody knows, no one's going to sue you for it, right?
Also, then if someone sues us, we know who ons the rights.
There you go. That's how you figure these things out.
We've outed them.
Unless you put a little cheese in a trap, you'll know you have a mouse if the cheese gets eaten.
Yes. How are you ever going to know that your bridge will hold at least a 40-ton truck until you drive a 40-ton truck over it?
Exactly.
Oh, there's regulations.
Turns out the bridge crashed and did not hold the truck.
So bad way of making bridges.
Hang on, lost my place again. There we go. Pigeon in B&M gives £10 and says realistic water physics is a lot harder than it sounds. Fluid dynamics are really complicated. Fucking Where's My Water managed it. Just do that bit in 3D.
Just do that bit in 3D.
Harder. I feel like it's a little bit
staple 2D.
You're talking like together. Me, and I don't know how to make games. You know how to make games.
Just, copy paste.
I don't know.
I like the idea that when... Oh, God.
You keep seeing these like CG showpiece videos of where they've got like a million different particles moving at once. or they got really realistic fluid filling up a perspex box. Just make a game out of that.
But I think nothing else
like those
exists
are
in
cherry
that world.
picks.
Yeah, like I think like you can do that because I have to imagine. I think it's really resource intensive. Oh, now I don't know what I'm talking about.
Well, do that, but then put like a pre-rendered 2D backdrop in the back, like Resident Evil.
Now you're talking. Now you're speaking my language. Give me more pre-rendered 2D backgrounds. Hell yeah.
Alex Armstrong gives $2 and says, "Remember me's mind puzzles come to mind. Lol again." Yes, Remember Me, a relatively interesting game from early Dontnod before they got into the Life is Strange racket. Where every now and again there'd be like a puzzle sequence where you had to change a person's personality by altering their memories.
I remember that.
You had to go into like a pivotal memory from the backdrop and changed it so they remember it differently. Like the person they thought they'd killed actually killed themselves. Then you don't actually change what happened in reality. You just change their memories of it. So presumably, once they found out that the memories no longer sync up with reality, they'd be held to pay. But the game sort of cuts away before any of that happens.
Yeah, it seems like you're like a memory terrorist at that point.
Well, basically, yeah.
That's grim.
Anyway, Sean Harriman, member for 7 months in the Green Gang, says Half-Life Alyx is a high point for VR, always compared to. Okay. Not sure where that came from, but okay.
I mean, just
I did remember that.
memorable.
I did remember that Astro of Astro's Playroom was originally the mascot for PlayStation VR. I think I'm right in saying.
Yeah.
So I guess they thought, well, the VR didn't work out, but hey, let's make toys out of this.
Yeah, exactly.
Danny123451 comes back with £5 and says, I just remembered an early PS3 game called Folklore. It's the only PS3 game I ever played that used the 6-axis well and made it fun. I remember that game. It was like a sort of third-person Japanese action RPG thing where you absorbed monsters and used their powers in a sort of Aria of Sorrow kind of way.
Yeah.
I love when games do
that. That was the same developer who made Genji, which was the giant enemy crab game. At the launch of the PS3. Yeah, I remember Folklore. Yeah, you'd take control of the little monsters. I don't think I played this, but it popped back up when I was rewatching some of those E3 press conferences recently.
I remember having it at one point. I'm not sure I played it. I think I was just like, I just think my housemate at the time played it, and I watched them play select bits of it. But yeah, it seemed interesting.
It's also like a lot of those PS3 games at the time are just sort of stuck on that console. There's always rumblings that Sony's like really investing in like true PS3 emulation, and maybe that's the way to get stuff like Metal Gear Solid 4 and all that shit, Infamous and everything. But we'll see.
Spicy.bp gives $5 and says, I want the immersive VR where all I do is catch blue, red, and green fish in a simplistic environment, make my own achievements on how many fish I catch.
Ooh. Gotta be a game. That's got to be a game, right?
Well, it's a reference to my latest novel, Will Leave the Galaxy for Good, in which a character is trapped in an immersive VR environment based on like a fishing cozy game, where all they do is catch fish.
Is that like hell?
It's a trap.
Sort of, yeah. It's presented as something that was intended as like an executive toy for bored office drones, but someone ends up trapped in it for 100 years.
Oh.
Worst things to be trapped in.
Pigeon in B&M gives £5 and says, as for a game which stick in my head, Kitty Horror Show's Anatomy. It's short and gameplay light, an experience, if you will, but so dread-inducing. I have never heard of that thing.
It's like an itch.io game.
Kitty Horror Show. I feel like I've heard that name. Oh, it's a little itch.io. Oh, this looks spooky. This looks like you're just hanging out in a spooky place.
Every other game on itch.io is a spooky concept game.
Oh, horror there. It's great.
Pigeon, I'm buying it. I'm doing it.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, shit, I don't have my credit card on me.
Jesus.
Well,
I don't know what I assumed, that I'd hit the button. It would just be like, sure, money's taken out of your account. You don't need to give me any information.
Guess you should hand out your credit card details to more online services.
It's true. I should put it in chat so that I remember, so that chat can tell me what my credit card
Hold this
info
for
is.
me.
Yeah.
Alex Armstrong Max KO gives $10 and says, for me, that game is Murdered Soul Suspect. The game itself isn't good, but I like how it used the history of its setting for a detective story. Just needed better writing and deduction mechanics. Well, the game was almost entirely writing and deduction mechanics based, so it just needed to be a better game, is what you're saying there.
I was thinking that with Banishers, right? I'm like, I like what you're going for here. It's just could have done.
See, I think both that game and Murdered Soul Suspect suffered from trying to be action combat, also have action combat as well as its deduction stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I
mean, again,
I remember about Murdered Soul Suspect. Oh, God.
Well, again, I'm thinking of Flintlock Siege of Dawn because that's a game that really tries to do way too many things.
Yeah. Murdered.
Look out for my review soon, kids.
This week?
No.
Shit. Murder Soul Suspect, the thing I remember most is the character design, which I thought was really good because you're like kind of like a bluish gray ghost. But you have you got shot to death like a bunch in your chest, and out of those bullet wounds is this like golden light. And so you're this sort of like ghosty looking noir detective with golden light out of your bullet wounds. And I always thought that was pretty neat.
Yes. Probably of all the games where you play a recently murdered person who investigates their own murder as a ghost, probably the worst.
You want to know the tagline? The hardest murder to solve is your own.
Is your own, right?
Yeah. Got the landing.
Play Ghost Trick Phantom Detective instead.
So good. It's so good.
There's a whole
Alex
genre
Armstrong.
of these? Okay.
There's like three. There's like 3 games where you're a ghost investigating their own murder. Murder Soul Suspect, Ghost Trick Phantom Detective, and I think there's a text adventure from like the 80s of that has the same concept as well.
I was going to ask if Banishers counted, but you know who killed you there. So
yeah.
No.
Anyway, Alex Armstrong gives $5 and says, you have to admit Sonic 06 has transcended game status and is now something that can't leave fans' minds to the point they tried fixing it with Project 06. Yeah, I guess the Sonic 06 lives rent-free in the heads of every Sonic fan forever now, because every game that comes out, they say, well, at least it's not as bad as 06.
And now they're like, but also we could fix it.
Yeah.
It's a cautionary tale, but also we will turn it into a success story.
Yeah, don't fix 06. Like, use it as a barometer.
That's gonna be what you're running on. Don't fix 06.
Yes. Yeah. There you go.
Your platform.
I'm a single issue voter. But just keep it, because you need something to be at the low end of the scale,
Yeah.
You need to say where are we on the spectrum between Sonic 06 and Sonic 2?
Is that the one you think is the best? You're making a
Yes.
solid stance.
He's a frontierman. Yes. We all know he's a frontierman. He's afraid.
No, I'm going to say that individually, taking each game as a whole, the best Sonic game is Sonic the Hedgehog 2 on the Sega Genesis.
Damn,
you're first emblematic.
Yeah, if you need an idea, there you go. It's right about Sonic 2.
Battle of the Hedgehogs. Yeah.
I'm not that invested. Thank you, Eric. Always quick on the funny filtered trigger, aren't you?
Yeah, you look pretty.
Oh, he's got that picture on copy paste.
On speed dial, yeah.
Hey.
Red Dwarf 42 gives $10 and says, Haze on the PS3 is a game I think about. Implemented better, it could have been actually interesting. It's what initially attracted me to We Happy Few until it turned out to be a survival game. Another example of a generic shooter from that era that tried to have an interesting story. Mm-hmm. Haze was a game that sort of, again, was playing around with the whole dynamics of being a player of a shooter, in which you're a dude who's been drugged up to the eyeballs to think that they're shooting basic bad guys in basically a video game setting, when in fact you've been like brainwashed and have to turn against the army you were originally a part of.
Yeah, it's a bummer because that was Free Radical who did the Time Splitters games, who were former Rare folks, so they worked on like GoldenEye and Perfect Dark and stuff. And I feel like the Time Splitters games and even Second Sight for the GameCube had such personality and charm to them that just Haze was completely lacking.
It's funny, yes. You start off making the indie focused stuff with your own unique spin on it, and then you just try to make the same bland guff as everyone else, and inevitably just fade into the background.
Yeah.
For more on this subject, look out for my review of Flintlock Siege of Dawn coming soon.
This week?
No.
If I keep asking, maybe it will be.
Next, it's going to be next week's review as it happens.
I know that week.
This week's going to be something that a lot of people have been saying I should review, but I haven't yet. And the last few weeks,
Pathologic 2?
Someone in the fucking comments has said, "Hey, why haven't you done ... yet?" So this week is one of those.
Okay. Elden Ring DLC?
No.
Danganronpas?
No, it's 9 souls, all right?
They got 9 of those souls?
Yes. There's a whole 9 of them.
Machi.
Anyway. Palash T gives 1.99 and says, Manhunt 1. Uniquely horrific, very dirty stroke grungy.
It's a weird, yeah.
Honestly, the game that I think of more from that franchise is Manhunt 2. Because it was a lot shittier in terms of story writing and a lot more overt in its storytelling. And it was banned in like 90 countries or something.
That's
one
good.
One thing I miss is I miss when Rockstar was like, all right, we have our games that make us $1 billion, but then we can also make these small, kind of more experimental things. And now it's just, no, we only have our games that make us $10 billion, and we will only make those games once every 10 years.
Yeah, that's the gag, isn't it? Because if you look at their record, they put out like a game of year right up until, I think it's GTA 5.
Yeah.
And then it's like 6 years. 6 years, then Red Dead Redemption 2, then another 12 years.
Yeah. Yeesh.
Unfortunate, yeah. Speaking of that style of gaming, I meant to bring it up earlier. Hellpie. Just really stuck out for how crass, but also I was like, wait, what are you going for here?
Yeah.
It was a pretty interesting and pretty solidly designed platformer. It was just really unnecessarily crass.
Yeah.
To the point that just put me off. Like the implication that you're holding a jar of semen. I'm like, I don't want to play a game in which I have to hold a jar of someone's cum.
Yeah, no gag.
What about your own cum?
Yeah. Or you fight monsters in the sewers that just have shit caked around their mouths. Like, that's not a gag. That just makes me feel sick.
That's gross. Yeah. Oh well.
Mr. Sadface gives $5 and says, I know it means insane man in Latin, but I can't get over that the villains in Death Stranding are called Homo Demens.
Homo Demens.
Yeah. Only slightly less on the nose than the dude who had a skull for a face, whose name was Skullface.
Yeah. What about Die Hard Man?
What?
One of the
Bruce
main characters.
Willis was it?
Yeah, no, one of the main characters is named Die Hard Man.
Excuse me, it was D Hartmann. He was German.
The Hard Man
of the Munich Die Hardmans.
Okay.
Yes. Bogbapog comes back with $10 and says nothing, and then a little emoji of a gorilla.
Oh,
Harambe.
Doran Grossman Naples gives $2 and says, it doesn't beg the question, it raises it. Tut tut. Language evolves, Doran Grossman Naples. Get with the program. Because
I feel like that's funny coming from you, because I feel like you call us out on that stuff all the time.
Well,
that's because our literacy is kind of low.
Well, I am slightly annoyed by some kinds of literary snob, and the kind of literary snob that insists on using the correct version of beg the question. So it's the kind that gets up my nose.
You know what? Words are jazz. Words are jazz. Do whatever you want. There's no word cops.
Yes. See, originally, people say begs the question to means raises the question, as in that begs the question. But in the original meaning of begs the question is that it's a sort of logical fallacy in which you state something in which something is implied, almost like a no true Scotsman argument. The no true Scotsman argument begs the question of what a true Scotsman actually is by the speaker's definition.
Oh, so I'm using it right. Ah.
I'm using all of them wrong.
Anyway, Drago, member for 8 months in tip jar. Thank you very much. Tsunami Douche gives $5 and says, an image I'll never forget is the final boss of the PS2 game Bujingai. You and the boss have a choreographed sword dance and pose for each other.
Hot.
I've never even heard of that game.
I
thought that was the noise Sheldon makes on The Big Bang Theory.
No, I've never heard of Bujingai either.
Nowadays, that game would have romance options. Look at that. Look at that. Beauty. Oh, that's the One Piece would have romance
options.
Anyway.
That's cool.
A superb owner gives $5 and says, speaking of Metroid Prime, what do you lot reckon the best way to play Metroid Prime Hunters is these days? That was the DS one, wasn't it?
Buy it on DS or emulate it. Those are your only options.
Yeah, pretty much.
Buy a secondhand copy or emulate it. Maybe Nintendo will put DS games on the eShop. Like the Wii U had certain DS games on the eShop.
I very much doubt they will, because the DS kind of hinges on the dual screen thing.
Yeah.
Literally.
Little hint joke. No, Scotsman and whatnot.
There you go. Alex Armstrong gives $2 and says Monkey Island sword fighting and spitting contest. Yes, those certainly were pretty iconic puzzles. Those things had.
Love an insult sword fighting.
So what a lot of point-and-click adventure games that were Monkey Island's contemporaries didn't understand was that inventory puzzles were just the foundation of adventure games. If your game is nothing but inventory puzzles, then it kind of sucks.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it's like shooting things in a shooter. You got to have, some kind of unique selling point or gimmick. So Monkey Island had some really clever ideas, like sword fighting based on picking the right response to an insult. Which wasn't quite the same as an inventory puzzle, but at least was something interesting to latch onto.
I like it.
But you can learn more about that in my various extra punctuations on the subject of adventure games that I did back in the day. Anyway, Ryan Betts, member for 5 months in tip jar. And then Geldon Yetic gives $5 and says, I recently dipped my toe in the Hoyoverse with Star Rail. I'm not sure if I can't get it out of my head or if I'm trying to make sense of gacha appeal.
It's a gacha secondhand experience, the Hoyoverse, right?
Yeah, the only thing that keeps me from not diving in is it's not my genre, right? But I do wish for other games that would sort of have that very, very thematic, very crazy, over the top. This is not me condemning or condoning gacha. It's more so the base game of it is like, wow, like it's right in your brain.
Yeah, when I was playing Wuthering Waves, I always got the sense that it was a game, and then there was a gacha element sort of bolted onto the side of it for the whales, and everything else was just sort of there to create the excuse.
Sure,
it kind of feels like from what I've seen and played of Genshin and Honkai and Zenless Zone Zero.
I just love that it's called Honkai because it makes me think of a goose.
Oh, it makes me think of honkies.
A honky tonk.
What are you, racist?
This honky grandma be tripping?
Midwestern.
Yeah.
I was trying to make a nice, wholesome goose reference, and now you've made it all race weird.
Oh, no. I didn't mean to make it race weird. Oh, no. We did it. We got to the end.
I made it.
Hey, so we did. Well, thanks for listening to Slightly Something Else. A day late, sadly, but thanks for showing up. I was Yahtzee Crowshaw. I was joined by Frost.
It's a me.
And Marty.
Didn't make it race weird.
And this week, if you like me and like to hear my voice coming out of things, then you might want to watch my fully Ramblomatic this week on the subject of 9 Souls. I'll also have my usual Yahtzee Try stream. Haven't quite decided what I'm going to be playing on that, but we'll figure it out. We always do. What's out this week? Well, anyway,
there's
I was just looking at some shit I've been playing on the
yeah.
Oh, I'll bet. Yes, I've also got a semi-Ramblomatic dropping this week on Thursday, so check that out. And I'll be appearing as Mortimer in Saturday's Adventure is Nigh, as per usual. So that's all the ways you can hear my lovely voice this week on Second Wind. I was about to say secondwind.com there, but that didn't really work. Second Wind, the YouTube channel.
That suits you.
What else?
Filter.
Very,
Look at
very
that
lovely.
filter. That's good.
Hello, I'm Daniel Day-Lewis. How are you?
Oh my God, it is.
You go full method.
Your Majesty.
There you go.
Your Majesty.
Frost, plug your stuff.
I'm going to plug Kurt first for the $5 reduce. I think Disco Elysium use of skills as party members' voices in your own head was something profound and I wish was in more games. I never thought of that. Yeah, that is kind of your party, isn't it?
I don't know if you do wish it was in more games because I feel like most developers would implement it poorly.
Yes.
So I think it's almost
great.
Yeah, the concept is great.
This is definitely one of those, like, I'm so glad it's here. It's done so well. No one else tried this ever again.
Yeah, you will not be able to do this as well.
Yeah, as far as my stuff, you got your Monday cold take. You're going to have a Better with Friends later today, as it is Tuesday. I almost forgot. And then the usual stuff, the newly released, the shoot the shit on the Fridays. Yeah, what you got?
This is going to be a record. We know what newly released is already.
Oh.
That's like 6 days. And I'm going to say, if you like animes, you're gonna want to tune in. If you like your Japanimations, hachi machi. Cool. And then rest of the week, normal stuff. We got Firelink tomorrow, Dev Heads on Friday. Casey and I are starting Devil May Cry 5 on Thursday. We've reached the final game of our Devil May Cry journey. Yahtzee, what did you think of DMC Devil May Cry, the Ninja Theory one? Did we talk about that at all?
I feel like you've asked me that. I remember very little about it, except a dumb joke where a mop falls on the guy's head and he looks to camera and does a smirk and makes you want to hit him.
Okay, that's fair enough. There you go.
Although I also remember it had a semi-interesting boss fight set in a news ident.
It did. I thought it was good. I thought it was charming. Best combat of the series so far too. People are getting very mad for us for saying that. And then on Thursday at 2 p.m. Central, we're gonna have we're not gonna have any Elden Ring because we have a sponsored stream that Jack will be helming for Union of Gnomes, the titular Union of Gnomes that you've seen on various ads such as before this.
I've been hearing a lot about that game lately.
Jack, I'm gonna tell you, Jack's excited. Jack, as soon as that game came in, Jack was like, "I need to play this game because this is a Jack game." So we're gonna see a couple hours of Jack, just jacking it.
Oh, jacking it, jackety jack, etc. All right. Well, I guess that's it from us then.
Perfect.
Nice to see you all.
Bye everyone.